Here we go. Hey everyone, it's day after Easter. We just completed our 16-week series through the Gospel of Mark as a group here, and it's been an amazing journey and really been fun to be a part of it. Honestly, I'll miss this, and hope that those of you that have been tuning in and listening to the encore of this conversation, it's been an additional helpful resource for you in growing in your faith. And so we were all in Mark 16 yesterday, verses 1 through 8, resurrection of Jesus from the dead. And I'll just start us off here. The approach that I took to the passage was just to outline it under the categories of the question, the announcement, and the invitation. The question, who will roll the stone? The announcement, he's not here, he's risen. And then the invitation of the angels to look and see where his body was laid. And I think the target is so clear on Resurrection Sunday. It's like
Yeah,
you know what you need to talk about. In some ways, in a weird way, it's one of the easier messages to prepare every year because it's like you know what the good news is, and you kind of know why it's a defensible view, and you just kind of, for me, I'm just always finding ways to kind of stay faithful to the specific text I'm in, and then rearrange the content in a way that will land with some, fresh illustrations. And I think the question of who will roll away the stone really, you know, helped the room it gave the room context for the announcement. So good news needs context, right? Good news in a vacuum is hard to process, but good news sort of pinned up against bad news really brings some definition to how much impact there is, right? So like just having the room enter into that question, the idea that every single one of us knows what it's like to ask a hopeless question in a hopeless situation and to share what some of those questions might sound like for individuals. I could just feel the whole room almost like, hold on, isn't it Easter? Like, why are
yeah,
we going this path?
yeah,
And obviously, I didn't stay there long, but it allowed them to realize like the resurrection is not just true, it's necessary.
yeah,
And it's necessary because there's so much hopelessness in our world. And I think by the time I got to the announcement, there was this sense of almost lift and relief in the room, like, oh yes, like it's good. This is good that Jesus did this and grateful for it. And so um yeah, we did three services, which is unusual for us. And I just, felt that every service there were different little things that seemed to land. But was really encouraged by, the way that the room was kind of wrapping its heart around this good news, this resurrection proclamation, but then also this idea that like here's what it means for us. And we kind of landed in this idea that like Jesus gets us into real life and we couldn't get ourselves in. So yeah, we had a great morning and just so excited to see, as you guys saw, new faces, visitors, people we haven't seen in a while. And as all pastors are praying that there's some lasting fruit, right? That the
yeah,
next time we see some people won't be Christmas, but that the Lord did something really lasting. So,
yeah,
You get a glimpse into what our your church could look like if people were consistent. You know, the people who call themselves or who consider themselves a part of the church family were consistent. You're like, wow.
for
I mean,
sure.
we could really do some we could do some good damage here with this many
For sure.
lives.
Yeah.
agreed.
Yeah. Danny, talk to us a little bit about Huntington.
Yeah, honey, we were a little different. We were in the text, but we had three speakers. Our youth pastors duo, Pastor Myra, Pastor Jose, spoke on two aspects of the resurrection, and I closed it out with the third aspect, which was hope. So we the whole sermon into three. Everybody took like 10 minutes. I was the last guy, so I took a little longer. That was by design. But Pastor Myra spoke about how the how the resurrection means our redemption is completed, and she just hammered in on the idea of redemption and what that means for us. Jose preached on how the resurrection gives us a new life, right? How it just changed everything for everyone. It changed everything for human history. It was just this is a new life. And then I came in and we just spoke about hope. And we have an assured hope. It's not a not a fanatical hope. And the sermon, my portion of the sermon, ended up being very much more apologetics than I would have thought about. We really gave out some concrete evidence. Why do we have this hope? We told them it's not a holy hoping for the best. It's not something that we just a fanatical statement. It's we have the evidence. We have an evidence. And so we rejected this idea of blind faith, and we said, no, we have a thought out faith that we can trust, and that's why we have hope. And so we went through those topics. We went through that, and we said that God is a promise keeper. He says, "Go to Galilee, and now you will see me there, just like I told you." And I say He's a promise keeping God. And then that's where we said we talked about just maybe people have broke promises in your life. Maybe you're struggling to believe God when you can't even believe your own family. You can't even trust yourself. I want you to know God is not people. God is faithful to complete his promises. And then I closed with Peter. I just loved Peter, and I just said Peter did all the wrong things, and Jesus still loved him, and that's the gospel. And I want you to know if this is your first time or this is the only time you'll be at church, it doesn't matter. Jesus still loves you, and he's called you. And so we had two beautiful services in English and in Spanish yesterday, and in both services. Because of the timing and because of the three different, there wasn't like a much of a variance of sermons, but the people responded really the most to the promise keeping portion. That you're going to see me in Galilee, right? He's a promise keeper, and I think that was a moment where people can say, okay, I can really trust God. He's not what other people did to me. He's not what this other church did to me. He's not what this other pastor did to me. I can trust God as a promise keeper. And I think in both services, that was the more connecting dots where it says, you know what, I want to come back to I want to either come back to Jesus or I want to try Jesus. And that was our time together, man. It was a beautiful moment.
Yeah, Mark gives that great detail of the angels saying the disciples and Peter, which seems redundant, but obviously there's something pretty profound there in terms of how Peter may have viewed himself at that point in the story.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it similar to you, it gave me the opportunity to say, listen, here's who this invitation is for. And look at the women. They didn't believe. They weren't expecting him to actually do what he said he would do. And even at the end of the story, they still don't quite have it squared away. They're afraid and they're not talking about it. And then you
right.
get Peter and the disciples who are nowhere to be seen. And you know, someone I didn't grab his name, but a visitor walking in to one of our services jokingly said to me on his way in something along the lines of, I didn't understand his joke at first. He goes, "Are the walls in here strong?" I said, "What? Are the walls of the church building strong?" I said,
He'll
"Yeah,
fall down because he's
yeah."
gone to church.
The whole fall down thing because I'm in the church thing. I
Uh,
always thought that was more of a preacher's joke, but not something people actually say.
Mm.
Anyway, I had him in my mind, as I was saying, like, man, this is who this invitation for. If you're a betrayer, a denier, or what, So anyway, yeah, it's good. Dan,
and
talk
I
a
and,
little.
and I
Go
just
ahead.
told I'm sorry. I just told the people that I was Peter, and then God came for me. And if He came for me, He can come for you.
Yeah,
So
yeah, I love that. Dan Williams.
Same. The most I think the most weighty or response came along the including Peter part of the angel's announcement, and then pursuing what that what the implications of that were. That that the least impressive of the disciples when it meant the most was getting looped back in as the angel was actually making plans that had already been laid out by Jesus and reminding them that we're going to gather again in Galilee where it all started and we're going to get a restart. But I want to include Peter, and obviously connecting that to people who are flawed or failed or feel like they've been a part of some kind of betrayal. All of that resonates with people, probably similar to what you guys experienced.
Heath, talk to us a little bit about Blaze Church.
Yeah, it was like you guys are saying, Easter's just one of those unique Sundays where at least for me, I said to Amy on the way in, I'm nervous to preach today more than usual because you just anticipate that the room's going to be a little more full, and you're hopeful that it's going to be people who they normally don't go to church, or they've never been to a church. And so taking that into consideration, I kind of started with kind of saying, why are you here right now? And gave some suggestions that some of us are here out of tradition. That's what we do on Easter. Others are here out of guilt because maybe you haven't been to the church in a while and you feel like you should. Others, it's an act of worship. That created like an equal playing field for everyone to understand. You don't know the reason why the person sitting next to you is here, but we're all here. And our common denominator is everyone here is either searching or has searched before. We're either currently searching for hope and meaning, or we know what it's like to search for hope and meaning. And Easter tells us you don't have to search any longer. So I think out of the text, the big connection point that I made was focusing on the fact that Mark used the three women, used them by name, which gives him this kind of, hey, I wrote this in the first century. If you don't believe me, go ask Mary. She's potentially still alive. Like, I'm giving you all the proof that you need, as well as this was like the biggest, I think, connection point. They bought spices to anoint the body. And I really stayed there for a while to explain, if some of you can't ever imagine a resurrection happening, neither could the disciples.
Yeah, that's
That
good.
you may have more in common with the disciples of Jesus than you actually realize. If you only think that you need this perfect faith to come and see the empty tomb, you're wrong, because they expected what everyone expects when someone dies, a dead body. And like from there went into the messenger's announcement, fourfold, don't be afraid. You're looking for Jesus who was crucified. He is risen. He's not here. And then see the place. And when I said see the place, that's in our first service, we had at that point a lot of Case for Christ, Case for Easter books. And I said, hey, the way you can see the place, the tomb, is we've got these books for you. And all 40 of them went. The team told me afterwards, like, hey, we have no more books besides the one you have on stage. So we quickly made a QR code and had a bunch of people scan it in the second service to get a book this week. But again, it was, you probably have doubts or curiosity. Our encouragement to you is lean into those. Like, if Jesus rose from the dead, and for thousands of years we're talking about it, it's at least worth your true investigation and time. And then I thought I was sharing with you guys the week leading in, kind of apprehensive about how do you wrap this up? Like Mark verse 16:8 just kind of ends with fear, and they don't say anything. And I shared that with the church. I was mad at Mark. I wish he would have gave us and they believed and told everybody, and they were happy. I said that would have been a preacher's dream for a great wrap up to Easter. I kind of used that as our ending moment to say, but it's way more real and honest. To say they were still terrified, they were still astonished, they still were silent, and we know that they talked because we're talking about it today. So inevitably they did tell the message, but their leaving that tomb was like wonder and amazement, and also fear, because the gospel shatters our categories of what we think Jesus should be. So it was just a great Sunday. I felt really relaxed preaching. I don't know how your guys' rooms were, but the room is unique because you have people who have they've never been to church, or I even acknowledge some of you, the reason you're here is because someone bribed you with pancakes afterwards, and I'm the guy standing in the way of your breakfast. But you're here and I'm here, and we should just get along for the next 30 minutes anyway. So it was very conversational. I felt like the preaching style, and really just pointing to there's a whole lot of evidence that shows Jesus is alive. He's worth your consideration, and I believe he's certainly worth your allegiance, because you will continue to search if you don't find Jesus and allow him to find you.
I love that.
Beautiful.
I got a couple of I forgot to mention a couple of 20-somethings gave me a little feedback too that I thought was valuable, which is I took a little offhanded moment to say, I'm going to give you three theories that, agnostics, atheists, secular humanists, people who are not yet believers in Jesus, arguments that they use historically to disprove the resurrection. And then I gave those three things. But before I said that, I said, no, I'm not going to do a very good job with these theories because they're not mine. They're the opponent's theories. It's the other side. But I'm going to try to give a good faith representation of their best argument. And if you're one of those people, I'm probably not going to get it right exactly, but I at least want to fairly represent your strong argument. And then I went on to tell what those theories were. And the 20 somethings were like, I was so um, I really liked hearing you respect the other argument, the other side or whoever might have been in the room who didn't agree. And I said, well, I only do that because when I hear somebody stand up a straw man argument on the Christian faith, it's so off putting that I can't even listen to what they're saying. It's so off putting. I don't even believe half the time what they're saying that Christians believe. So
Yeah.
I certainly don't want to do that to someone else, but obviously it resonates with the 20 somethings who are out there on the front lines of cultural apologetics. But the other thing I want to mention too is that when I got to I scrapped my ending, big risk, Easter morning. I scrapped my whole last application. I had about 10 minutes of content that I just said, I'm not going to do this. I felt pretty strongly that I should end. As you were saying this, Keith, it reminded me that it ends pretty down. But I was compelled to add that Jesus said to his disciples later, we're going to meet again on another time. We're not just going to meet in Galilee. We've done that, but we're going to meet again another time. And he starts with, let not your heart be troubled, one of my favorite lines in the Bible. And then he says, I'm going to prepare a place and you're going to be with me always. And so I felt like that was a good way to end the Easter message, to say, what does this resurrection life mean for Jesus? It means that we're also going to get to meet him, but not in Galilee. We're going to meet him where he's preparing a place because of
Beautiful.
resurrection power. And that was so much better to me than trying to revive verse 8, in some way, because it gets worse before it gets better. I mean, even in between there, the disciples get rebuked for not believing when Jesus is appearing. I mean, it gets uglier before it gets any better.
Yeah.
So I just felt like Sunday morning I was scrambling around trying to get that straight.
Yeah, that's a great ending. That's great. I love that.
Awesome. Anything else? Where are you guys going next? Just for the sake of conversation, what's your next? We're going into a 4 week series called Hearts That Can Hear, which is just a series on how do we hear from God for ourselves and for our families and our lives. And so we're talking about hearing God through His Word, hearing God through the Spirit, hearing God in community, and I can't think of the fourth week. Hearing God,
Televangelists,
televangelist, yeah.
prophets,
Oh,
yeah.
tarot cards, hearing God through tarot cards. That's
Tarot
what
cards, right? That'll
we're
be your
calling
biggest attendance, bro.
it. What are you guys heading into as we
We
sadly
have
go our separate ways?
Yeah, we have 5 weeks on the Book of James.
Nice. Oh, I love James.
He loves you too.
Yeah,
We're doing 6 weeks on real life, real faith, where faith and life intersect, and how faith informs how we live every day.
love that.
Great. We're doing Deadly Desires, 8 weeks, going through the 7 deadly sins. We're taking week 1 to just talk about how this stuff comes from out of us, so it came from within the heart, and then we'll be hitting each one of those 7 deadly sins, which I've never preached on gluttony or sloth or laziness or whatever it is. So should be
Go
making a
hard,
fool of
man.
myself at some point.
Go
Yeah.
hard on those.
We're gonna transition all of our snacks over to fruits and vegetables the week of gluttony. So
That's awesome. Well, guys, it's been a real joy to go on this journey with each of you. I don't know who's been listening to these conversations, but I do know that I've heard from some people that this has been a great gift to them as well. And I've personally benefited so much from this time. And I hope we do it again.
Amen.
absolutely.
Take care, everyone, and we'll talk soon. Bye.
Yeah.